This next one, I'm going to try and read it slower than I normally would because it's a fast-paced rant, basically, and it's actually inspired by a friend of mine who is here to perform tonight. It's called Colorblind. Everything is composed of shades of gray, or so at least some often like to say, that there's no such thing as universal moral laws, and that only the ignorant and close-minded would fail to conscribe to a fundamental collective of comforting conceptual flaws, often formed by pretentious pretenders preaching emotional fallacies, whom are followed by lemmings habitually leeching off of every word in order to fill their minds with intellectual fantasies, my bad. Shades of gray is the thought that any and every action, and furthermore course of conduct, is intrinsically subjective due to intricacies in the respective circumstances. Therefore, nothing is inherently right or wrong, meaning that your reaction and interpretation of any given circumstance should be reflective of the collective choice predominant within the environment of said circumstances, which is typically comprised not from the wisest group, but rather the largest with the loudest voice. There is no black and white, and should you disagree, then you're either closed-minded or a fool incapable of comprehending the simple inescapable conclusion that right and wrong are merely shades of gray. Meaning my publicly formed opinion is at the very least and at the utmost as good as yours, and ergo an open-minded and enlightened individual would not voice any personal conviction to the contrary, thereby implying an inherent restriction on any other's unquestionable right to be of a different mind. If you are intelligent enough to understand my opinion, then you should share it as well, and if you still don't, then you are obviously intellectually blind, and I, for one, won't deign to listen to, let alone consider, the ridiculous connotations from an individual with such obviously bigoted connotations such as yourself. I admit, shades of gray is indeed an interesting philosophical concept, in itself worthy of recognition, discussion, and contemplation. However, almost every self-described, open-minded individual I've yet encountered has parroted the word shades of gray, not as a conversational device designed to invoke deeper consideration of one's own perspectives on a given subject, but rather to express an excuse for something. For example, when you reach the point in a conversation where they haven't the ability to logically contest your side of the argument and so proclaim shades of gray, meaning the whole conversation ultimately was based on personal opinions on that subject. And since any given topic is entirely subjective, it doesn't matter what that point was, since ultimately yours is irrelevant as well. Now then, if my perception of this convoluted, self-righteous conception has left you feeling offended, then I apologize, but that's not what I had initially intended. And yet, if you are still offended, then I must remind you that it's all shades of gray, and so since the from a personal perspective of my actions, your personal feelings of what I've said are ultimately irrelevant.